Introducing Royal Caribbean's newest ship, Icon of the Seas, the ultimate family vacation. The ultimate 6 slides, 8 neighborhoods, 0 compromise vacation. The ultimate never done that, can't wait to do it vacation. The ultimate chillin' by a different pool every day of the week vacation. This is the Icon of Vacations. Icon of the Seas, arriving in 2024. Book today. Come seek the Royal Caribbean. Ships Registry, Bahamas.
I've got kids, and that means it's always about them. But I need support too. That's where Ollie comes in. With their delightful, hardworking gummies, my partner and I can actually get a good night's sleep, so we'll both stand a chance of managing our stress responses. Even when the kids are doing parkour in the living room, discover Ollie vitamins and supplements. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Hello there, Duke fans, and welcome to episode number 559 of the Duke Basketball Roundup. It is Saturday, November 18th, 2023. Duke back in the win column again with the win over Bucknell last night. We are here to talk about all of it in a very, very interesting way. Before we talk about how we're going to discuss this game, I am Donald Line. I am your host for this episode, and I'm going to first off bring in Jason. Jason, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great, Donald. Your audio, your video, everything about it sounds and looks great considering where you are.
Yes. For those of you out there, I am in Trinidad and Tobago, as you all know.
Wait, are you in Trinidad or Tobago?
I am in Trinidad. I'm in Port of Spain, the capital city. Beautiful, beautiful city. I am looking out over the mountains and everything right now. But as a result, Jason, they don't like college basketball down here. And the way that the TV rights kind of work, once you leave the country, the rights of college basketball kind of stay in the United States, and I left. So unfortunately, I was not able to watch this game last night. But what we're going to do, Jason, I know you watched the game. I know a lot of our listeners did, and we got a lot of headlines about this. So we're going to take this recap of the Bucknell game in a different way than we normally do. We'll still have our headlines. We'll still have the good. We'll still have the bad. But it's going to be more of an interview, Jason. Jason, I'm interviewing you because you're the only one else that's on this show right now. So first off, let's get the basics out of the way. Duke, again, back in the winners column, 90-60 victory over Bucknell last night in Cameron Indoor Stadium. And Jason, we begin as we normally do with the headlines. And so I turn it to you. What headlines do we have out there that could tell me, this person who snuck off to Trinidad and Tobago, something about how this game transpired?
Well, we'll start with Courtney Spence, who says she's a longtime listener of our podcast, but the first time she's ever sent in a headline, and she had a couple good ones. I'm going to give you both of hers. She clearly is a listener because she understands alliteration. So her first one was balanced Blue Devils bounce Bucknell. I really like that. And
say that five times fast, Jason.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I'm not going to try. This was a very balanced Blue Devil attack. She also gave us Mark Mitchell muscles past Bison. And this was, look, Donald, we talked about it. I'm the guy who said Mark Mitchell would never lead Duke in scoring. I was wrong. He led us in scoring this game. I think part of the story of the season so far is that Mark Mitchell is way more aggressive taking the ball to the hoop than he was last year. And he did it again and again and again against Bucknell. And that was a big part of Duke's success in this game. I also want to shout out, speaking of alliteration, Nick Soprano gave us Devils duo, McCain and Mitchell make mincemeat of Bison. I like that one a lot. And we'll be talking about Jared McCain. I guarantee that. Chris Immershine provided flip slips, but Mitchell and McCain are muscle men as Devils buck Bison. Boy, just tons of rhyming and stuff like that there. And Donald, you didn't get to see it, but I will tell you about the little scare that happened with Kyle Filipowski that ended up being nothing. And then the last headline I really liked was Nate Damon. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. It might be Damon. The buck stops here, making a alliteration to Bucknell. The buck stops here. Blue Devils snap longest home losing streak of John Scheyer's career. Remember?
Hey, you got to start somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, John Scheyer's longest losing streak ends at 1. And let's keep it that way for a long, long time. Okay.
Jason, we're going to switch to the good. And before we do that, I kind of want to start with that, that elephant in the room. Again, I had been following the game with friends. Obviously was not able to watch it, but I was still kind of keeping track of what was going on. And of course, my phone blew up when Flip went down early in the game. Talk about that injury, or at least the scare that we had, because he did come back in the game. I see that he did get 10 points. Was it something that was – do Duke fans need to be worried about Kyle Filipowski right now?
No, I don't think so. Look, it was clearly a case where he was trying to post up. He had a guy on his back, and he turned his ankle. It did not look like a bad ankle turn at the time it happened. In fact, I was a little surprised. They were Stanley Borden and one of the other guys. I couldn't tell who it was. Helped Flip sort of limp back to the locker room. I was like, man, it just didn't look that bad on the replay. I was a little surprised that he came back in the second half, that he came out for the start of the second half. He went down with about 5 minutes to go in the first half. And like I said, immediately went back to the locker room. Clearly it was something that after a couple minutes, he was like, wait, this is perfectly fine. I think Scheyer could have held him out, and Duke did not need Kyle Filipowski to win this game. We were dominant in many, many phases of the contest. And as we said in the preview, Donald, Bucknell they're one of the, bottom 50, 60 teams in all of college basketball. They were not able to stay with Duke. They had, no chance of that really. But I think Scheyer wanted to get Filipowski back out there so Flip could feel good and confident and not worried about the ankle at all. Look, we don't play again until Tuesday. I'm sure the team will probably take at least one day off this weekend. And it's nothing. It was nothing to worry about. It was kind of forgetful game for Filipowski. Other than that, I thought he played good defense, but there wasn't a lot else about his game that really stood out compared to a few other guys.
I mean, look, Jason, he had 10 points, 6 rebounds, 2 steals, and a block. If that's calm, if that's a cold night for Kyle Filipowski, I think a lot of teams would take that. Exactly. But it is interesting, when we're talking about the injury, or at least the ankle thing. A lot of people were just like, "Oh no, flips down," and like Twitter and all that stuff doesn't necessarily read or listen to reports. So I'm glad that you're able to provide me a little bit of context about how it happened and how he entered the game. And sometimes you do need to get back into the game if it's not that serious, just again, like you said, so you can have the confidence to say like, hey, everything's okay. I'm going to be good. But I'm really glad that he's okay. And hopefully we'll get a couple of days of rest from Kyle Filipowski. Let's move on to a lot of the good. And I know there was a lot to spread around, Jason. So I want to start with a stat that we've been kind of tracking so far this year: rebounding. 46-27, Duke out rebounds Bucknell. We talked about how they were a smaller team than teams we've usually faced, and of course, one of the bottom 30 in Division I basketball. But talk about how well some of these guys did, namely a lot of the guards, because I see a double-double, and it's not from a big man; it's from Jared McCain.
Yeah, exactly. The big rebounding stats are that Duke out rebounded them on offensive rebounding wise. Just huge. We had 13 rebounds. They only had 5. We got 23-0. Duke won second chance points. It's sort of interesting. Even though we had the 13 offensive rebounds, our offensive rebounding rate was 37%, which is good, but it's not like it's super dominant. The place we were really dominant was on the defensive boards, where we had an 87% defensive rebounding rate. In this game, Bucknell missed 38 shots and Duke grabbed 33 defensive rebounds. That's some serious work on the defensive boards. And you're right to mention that the guards did a really, really nice job of helping out on the defensive boards. Jared McCain, look, if you had Jared McCain as the first Blue Devil of the season to get double-digit rebounds, please take your ticket to the cash out window and collect a very large prize, because I don't think any of us expected that. He was going so hard on those defensive boards, was boxing guys out and fighting dudes for rebounds. He really got up in the air and reached for them, and it just seemed comfortable and confident doing that. I mean, that's a huge deal for a young freshman guard who frankly is kind of playing out of position, because he's been, I think his future, in the NBA, people probably would expect at the college level, is as a combo guard. and he's being asked to play mostly kind of small forward, more, he's a wing, but he's asked to guard bigger guys, and he's playing sort of a bigger role at Duke than you might have expected at a lot of programs, and he's having no trouble with it at all. And he finally had the game where he broke out from distance, rained threes, 5 of 7 from long range. A number of them were taken not like 1 step, but 2 or even 3 steps beyond the 3-point line. Jared McCain has unlimited. Jared McCain and Tyrese Proctor, both of them. Like, if you leave them open, you don't have to leave them open from 19 or 20. If you leave them open from 23, they're going up with it. And both those guys had really nice games shooting the ball.
I especially like Jared McCain, the way he rebounded from the game he had against Michigan State. He's kind of had an up and down first few games. And again, he's a freshman. The freshmen are going to go through those growing pains. But I do like again, it's not necessarily about how you perform, but how you respond to adversity. He's sitting there and he's like, hey, I had a terrible game. I got to rebound. I got to do what I need to do to help the team win. And he was able to do that. Again, 10 rebounds. Forget the the cashing of the ticket. What numbers are you playing in the lottery, Jared McCain? Because I want to know those. But again, we've talked about how a lot of times our perimeter defense has been good to the point where teams are taking a lot of long jumpers, which means a lot of long rebounds, which means our guards need to step up. We talked about that on the preview, or at least the recap of the Sparty game and the preview for this game. We talked about how our guards need to step up and make it where it's a team event when it comes to rebounding. It sounds like that happened last night against Bucknell.
Yeah, and you mentioned the type of shots that Bucknell was taking. One of the things I had in the good that I think may have gotten overlooked a little bit by some people, when you're looking at McCain getting all these rebounds and draining threes. Mark Mitchell had a big game. We'll talk more about him in a second. To me, I thought Duke did an outstanding job on defense for the most part. And when we get to the bad, there's going to be a little thing I'm going to mention here where they didn't do a great job. But they forced LaSalle into bad, difficult shots almost this entire game. I thought Kyle Filipowski and Ryan Young did a great job on Noah Williamson, not LaSalle. I'm getting ahead of myself. The Bucknell big man who never got anything going at all for them. He's their second leading scorer, and he really couldn't get. He wasn't successful on the blocks. He wasn't successful when he stepped outside. Our bigs did a great job on him, but our guards, for the most part, were the story on defense. They forced LaSalle to work so hard and forced LaSalle to take lots of shots late in the shot clock. There was a ton of dribbling going on from LaSalle, and I don't think that was by design. I think that Duke was doing such a good job with the perimeter defense that whoever had the ball for LaSalle, God, I keep on saying this, LaSalle, Bucknell. God, you know who I'm talking about. Clearly, I'm prepared for the preview for LaSalle, our next game. Whoever was dribbling the ball for Bucknell couldn't find teammates to pass it to. And we saw them pounding the ball into the ground like, what am I going to do with this ball next? Repeatedly throughout this game. It was a very good defensive effort by Duke, and I think that defensive effort was largely led by the pressure on the perimeter.
Jason, before we go to some of the other guys we're going to talk about in this good part, because there's a lot of good to discuss, there's a question that I have for you, seeing as you watch the game. There was a point in the first half where Duke was only up 7 points. And then all of a sudden, they went on a pretty nice run, it seems like, to get to the end of the half and make it where it seemed fairly comfortable at halftime. Is there a couple of guys there that were the catalyst for that kind of run, or was it a team effort? Again, you mentioned the perimeter defense turning into offense. You mentioned second chance points, but is there a guy that stands out in some of these runs that kind of made it where Duke fans were kind of like saying, hey, this might be a closer game than we thought, to, wow, this is way more comfortable. We're good to go.
Well, the surprising thing is a lot of the run happened, the late run that gave us a very comfortable halftime lead happened after Kyle Filipowski went down. I feel like that both Ryan Young, even though Young, it wasn't his scoring. By the way, Young had an incredible game passing the ball. I'll get to that in a second. But Ryan Young and Mark Mitchell, it felt to me like both those guys were like, okay, Flip is out. We're going to make sure that things are perfectly fine on the interior here. Mitchell started really taking the ball to the basket at that point. Duke also hit a couple threes during that stretch. It was the usual suspects. It was McCain and it was Proctor who were primarily hitting the 3-pointers in this game. I don't know that it was any one thing that Duke did other than I think maybe Flip going out, the team went, okay, we need to refocus a bit. and they had little trouble pulling away from Bucknell when they did that. Look, this was a game where Duke's outside shot was on. And I don't think, we hit 38% from long range, which is good. Oh, boy, I'll take 38% any day of the week for this Blue Devil team. But that's actually a deceptive figure because TJ Power, Spencer Hubbard, and Neil Begovich all missed 3-pointers in mop-up time. We went 0 of 6 on 3-pointers, like in the final, 3 or 4 minutes when those guys were in there. So if you take those out, again, not saying they're not part of the team, but if you take out those sort of mop-up minute 3-point shots, Duke was 13 of 28 on 3-pointers. That's better than 46%. That is scorching, my friend. That is just tearing down the nets from long range. And they were good 3-point shots. Every one of them was open. We've been hearing and we've speculated that this is going to be one of the better long range shooting teams that we've had at Duke in a while. And I think you really saw that happen in this contest.
And it also seems like, going back to Jared McCain, it seems like a lot of that, not necessarily the pressure of being a good 3-point shooting team, but really just like as a team, it rested on him breaking out, right? We've talked this whole year so far up to this point about how Jared McCain really hadn't broken out yet from beyond the arc. He was supposed to be the guy, I picked him in the stats game to lead the team in 3-point percentage. And I thought a lot of people probably were assuming that Jared McCain was going to start knocking it down at some point, and that helps lift the team too. When you see a guy doing what he is on the court to do, essentially, it makes it where everyone gets that confidence to start hitting from downtown too. So the fact that he broke out last night is a great thing, not just for himself, but for the rest of the team, because if they start seeing him knocking it down, then everyone's going to, have that confidence and just jump on the back with him. And everyone's going to have, it feels like the jar is like, several inches wider than it normally is. And that's when stuff starts going down. But Jason, one part of that, a lot of teams, when you have open jumpers, it's because the ball is being moved into position where everyone's open. A lot of assists in this game, 23 assists on 32 made baskets. Talk about the ball movement in this game.
Look, the assist rate, you mentioned 23 assists for it was almost 72% assist rate. I mean, that's unbelievable. And when you then stack that up against the turnovers, only 7 turnovers in this game. Duke had a 3.2 assist to turnover ratio. That's ridiculous. I mean, the report I got on the game from the Duke Sports Information Department said this was Duke's best assist to turnover ratio of any game this year. I'm like, no, duh, 3.2. Really?
we can math.
That's a crazy.
That checks out.
Yeah, it's like that's a crazy assist to turnover ratio for Duke to have in the game. Caleb Foster led the team with 6 assists. Big number from him. Tyrese Proctor had 4, so we get 10 assists out of our 2 point guards. I mentioned earlier Ryan Young had 5 assists in 14 minutes. Are you kidding me? 5 assists in 14 minutes while you're playing center? That's crazy from Ryan Young.
And that's what we want from Ryan Young, right? Like, we're not relying on him to get 10 points. We're relying on him to maybe provide some rebounding, which, I think helps, especially, again, when you mentioned when Flip was out. But it's really about him working the ball around. We've seen all summer long him being a part of the offense in a way where he gets the ball, high key or maybe even low post, and is finding his teammates for open threes or open looks to drive to the lane. We're at our best when Ryan Young is passing the ball well.
Yeah, and the craziest thing about those 3 guys, those were our 3 assist leaders. Again, Caleb Foster has 6, Ryan Young has 5, Tyrese Proctor has 4. That's a total of 15 assists out of those 3 guys. They combined for 0 turnovers.
We love that.
I mean, come on.
We love that. That math does not exist.
Yeah, that's
that is his turnover ratio.
Your 3 leading assist guys have 0 turnovers. That's just outrageous. And deep tease, Donald, when we get to our play of the game, I'll be mentioning a Ryan Young assist. There's no question what the play of the game was.
It.
You'll hear about it in just a little bit. I just really quickly, but as we wrap up things in the good, I wanted to mention a couple players who stood out. We haven't talked enough about Mark Mitchell. Duke is now 17-1. 17-1 in games where Mark Mitchell scores in double figures. This was a career high for him, his 20 points. Look, his 3-point shot still looks bad. I'm just going to say it. His 3-point shot is still too flat, but he's gotten so much more aggressive, as I mentioned, about taking the ball in the lane. He puts he gets in there and just starts putting all those different spin moves on guys, and he's finishing really, really well in the paint. And I didn't expect to see Mark Mitchell being as aggressive as he has been this year on offense. When I've mentioned when I made my prediction that he would never lead the team in scoring, it was because I didn't think he'd be shooting as much as he is, and he is taking really good shots. And the other thing is, dude is getting to the free throw line and just making them again. And I need to look and see. I think he's like around 90% on his free throws on the season. Is just a really big number from Mark Mitchell. And then the last guy I wanted to mention, haven't talked about him at all so far, but I wanted to shout out Sean Stewart, who had 7 rebounds in 16 minutes, 3 offensive rebounds. There were a couple of his offensive rebounds where you just saw that he was. We talk about rebounding out of your area. It's one thing to grab the ball when it comes to you. Like Jared McCain did a great job of grabbing the ball when it came to him. Jared McCain just doesn't have the size. He doesn't have quite the athletic ability to be a guy who's like, oh, it's 7 feet away from me, I'm going to beat everyone else to that ball. That's what Sean Stewart is. There were a couple rebounds I saw Sean Stewart get, like offensive rebounds, long rebounds, where you're like, oh, I wonder who's going to get that one. And you're like, oh, wait, I don't need to wonder. Sean Stewart is getting that one. He is really, he really goes after it. He also had 3 steals in this game. And look, I want to be clear. I've said this before. He's still like a puppy dog out there, but he's running around with boundless energy. He's unsure where to go, but he has unbelievable energy. And when he gets a little more discipline, when we teach our puppy dog exactly, don't pee over here. Let's go outside before you pee. Okay. When we teach our puppy dog a little bit more, Sean Stewart is going to be when he gets a little more discipline to his game, he's going to be a devastating basketball player. I'm going to go ahead and say it right now. I mean, that dude is just, he's going to take over games at time because of that athleticism. But in the meantime, he's going to have games like this where he had 4 fouls, by the way. He's like too aggressive. He had 4 fouls in 60 minutes. If we played him as a regular more often, he would foul out of games. But you just see what could happen from this guy. And I was so excited by it. Even though we're still only catching little glimpses of it here and there. And I think it's going to take him a little bit of time. This is not someone where I'm like, oh, once December rolls around, he's going to have it figured out. But man, you talk about maybe February, that dude could be just wreaking havoc on the inside because he has so much athleticism and so much aggression.
Jason, we're going to wrap up the good real quickly. But before we do, I kind of want to use some of those performances that you mentioned to kind of highlight something overall that I saw Jon Scheyer do last night, and he utilized his bench. We had 5 starters and we had 5 players off the bench that had more than 10 minutes of playing time. And then we had a couple, Begovic and Hubbard come in during mop-up duty. Look, this is what Duke fans were asking for, right? They were asking to see this bench utilized to get some of these guys playing experience and to be able to see what they can do on the floor. We saw TJ Power over 10 minutes this year or in this game. Christian Reeves, the only reason probably he didn't get 10 minutes is because he didn't play because he has that ankle injury that's been bothering him and they set him out. So otherwise you probably would have seen a sizable amount of minutes from Christian Reeves. Talk about Jon Scheyer and his rotation and also just, again, overall how the bench did in this game.
Yeah, so I like the fact that he managed to get TJ Power in, I don't want to say early, but late in the first half, I think it was. But TJ Power got some, it wasn't just mop-up minutes for him. It still looks like he's probably going to be mostly a mop-up minutes kind of guy. It feels like he's further away than the rest of them, but Sean Stewart came in early. Caleb Foster, of course, came in early. Ryan Young had a great game off the bench. It feels like, those 3 guys are and Jalen Blakes. I always overlook Jalen Blakes, and he doesn't deserve to be overlooked because he's just a terror on defense. Those 4 guys, I should say, are the crux of the rotation, and I imagine that you'll see those guys playing in every game. Maybe not big minutes, but you're going to see them in every game. But yeah, this was a game we talked about it in the preview where with an overmatched opponent, Duke had a chance to really stretch out the bench a bit and let these guys play and try out different combinations. At one point, Donald, the 4 freshmen and Jalen Blakes were the 5 guys in the game. And I was like, this is just kind of an interesting, I didn't expect kind of an interesting combination.
Okay.
Yeah, it was kind of cool. But the big thing to say about Jon Scheyer is this, Donald, first time in his career, Jon Scheyer picked up a technical. And yeah. Oh, you need to go back and watch this. So what happens is this. Mark Mitchell is taking a shot He drives in the lane, and as he goes up, he gets hit on the body. And then during the shot, literally one of the Bucknell players like slaps him in the face. I mean, he got whacked, Koala, pretty hard. The ball goes in, and the refs call nothing. And Jon Scheyer's like, they cannot assault my player and have you not call anything. And he's just laying into the ref. And like 15 or 20 seconds into the next Bucknell possession, the refs blow the whistle. They're like, I'm calling it clearly Scheyer was just, there's one of the refs near him on the sideline. Scheyer was into that guy in a big way for the entirety of that possession. And he was finally like, I've had enough. This was Jon Scheyer's 500th game at Duke. Games that played as a player, as an assistant, and now as a head coach. It's his first technical. He finally pissed off a referee. And
Jason, I need to know the answer to this question. Who was the get back coach? Every team has one. Who was the get back coach for Jon Scheyer?
I think it was Carrawell. I think I saw.
Okay, that sounds about right. That sounds about right.
Yeah. Because Sewell, you see, Sewell is always right next to Jon Scheyer there on the bench, and I tend to see Scheyer lean over and talk to him more than anybody else. I think it was Sewell was the get back guy, but yeah, it was great for Jon Scheyer to burst the bubble on the technicals. I don't need to see it a lot. Don't need to see it in a close game, but in a game like this, he was like, I got to defend my players.
Well, I think that's great, and I think again that only helps build the bond with his team that much more. You almost it's one of those things where you like. I know Mark Mitchell probably turned around and was like, "Yo, coach is reaming into this dude to protect me." Like that probably helps serve as a catalyst for guys to do well. And again, run through brick walls for a coach like that. But also, I'm glad that Sewell is the get back coach. He's probably the only guy on the staff that is a little bit more, built than Jon Scheyer. Like he's a little bit slightly taller.
A
little bit more built.
He's thick.
Yeah, not like, I mean, like dude could still play, like that type of thing. That type of body.
Wait, let's remember, dude guarded Tim Duncan. I mean,
right.
Very famously, Sewell guarded Tim Duncan.
So he can guard Jon Scheyer against and be the get back coach. So I'm glad we have a good get back system set up in place at Duke University. Hey, Jason, that's going to wrap up the good. Let's take a quick break. On the other side, we will review some of the stuff that needs to improve. And also, LaSalle is coming to town next week. We'll talk about that game after this. All right, Jason, we are back from the break. We are going to discuss some of the things that you saw in this game that need to improve. And we're going to start, it's funny, we're going to start the way we left off with the Scheyer technical. And sometimes the Scheyer, a technical by a coach is used to motivate a player or motivate a team to get back into the flow of things. But that's not quite how it went down, did it?
No, it kind of isn't. So Jon Scheyer picked up the technical and Duke was up 19-9. It was about 8 minutes into the game. And up to that point, Duke had done a great job on Jack Forrest. You and I talked extensively about Jack Forrest in the pregame. This was a guy who he is the scorer. He is the guy with the ball in his hands for Bucknell. He's the one dude you needed to watch out for. And we had completely shut him down up until that moment of the game. And so Scheyer picked up the technical, and I noticed that Bucknell sent Jack Forrest to the line to take the 2 technical free throws, and he knocked both of them down. And I was like, I wonder if finally seeing the ball go through the hoop is going to matter for him, because he hadn't hit anything to that point. Boom. It became Jack Forrest time for a couple minutes there, Donald. Dude rained down a couple threes and some twos. He ripped off 10 points in the next 4 possessions. It went from like a 19-9 Duke lead to a 21-19 game. Suddenly it was like, oh, wait, they came back into it. Now, look, we kept him largely in check after that, but that was bad because coming off that technical by Jon Scheyer, we lost some defensive focus, and you cannot have that kind of thing. Luckily, this was against a team where they really only had one guy who could hurt you, and we let him hurt us for that little stretch. But I thought, if we're going to talk bad, that was a moment where you would have expected something different from the team after the Scheyer technical, and it like I said, we lost a little bit of defensive focus.
Yeah, and again, when you have a technical foul, the idea is mainly to draw attention to whatever it is that you're yelling about, what foul or what, something that happened. but sometimes it again is a way to kind of motivate your team. And when that happens, and I'll give them some grace, is like you just mentioned, 500 games for John Scheyer at Duke in his first technical, so they probably didn't understand how to react to that. It's not like he isn't a fiery guy. Like he's been on the bench before and really gotten to referees, but he's always done it within, I guess, reason before last night. And so I'm going to give them some grace. Sometimes it's hard to react to a coach doing that, but now that they've seen it, they probably know that they need to dig in even more. We remember the old, with Coach K, we get a technical, he'd stomp around or something and, tell the crazies to fire up. And everybody would go, oh, see, now you done messed them up. Now you got them awake. That's what needs to happen. So Cameron crazies next time, we're not expecting John Scheyer to have a slew of technical fouls, but if it happens next time, I need you guys to ratchet up a little bit. Jason, let's talk about some of the players that probably didn't have as good a showing as they normally do.
Yeah.
What players stood out to you as some that need to improve?
I mean, it's got to start with Jeremy Roach. Again, he kind of disappeared at times, or at least he was this may be a lot of Jeremy Roach deferring to the younger guys, giving them more of a chance. I'm not sure exactly what's going on. He only took 5 shots in this game. He didn't have a single assist. He had a couple turnovers, only 9 points. His usage rate was like down at like Jalen Blake's kind of levels. And in the case of Jalen Blake's, his usage rate is low because Jalen Blake's knows that offense is not his calling card. Well, offense is kind of Jeremy Roach's calling card. I was surprised this was, second game in a row where Jeremy Roach just seemed not super active, not like he was completely inactive, but it just wasn't quite the Roach that we expect to get at times. Again, McCain was having a great game. Tyrese Proctor, who I haven't talked about very much, had a really, really nice game. Was hunting his shot a little more than Tyrese Proctor usually does. And maybe Roach was just deferring, but we're going to need Jeremy Roach to be better than this, to be more aggressive than this at various times this year. The other guy I wanted to mention is Caleb Foster, who frankly to me was gunning, was looking for his shot a little more than I'd like to see. I think that coming off that Michigan State game, he sort of was like, I'm still super hot, and maybe he wasn't.
He checked, yeah.
He had the second most shot attempts on the team. Mark Mitchell had 13, almost all of which were taken at the rim. So I'm cool with Mark or wide open 3-pointers. They were stepping way off of Mark Mitchell and leaving him wide open. So there wasn't a single shot that Mark Mitchell took that I was like, well, that's a bad shot. I will not say the same thing about Caleb Foster. I don't think Caleb Foster needed to be taking 9 shots in this game. He was only 2 of 7 on threes. They weren't bad threes. But he came back down to earth after the huge game he had against Michigan State. I guess that's to be expected. But I thought, if we're gonna be honest in the bad, as we were supposed to, Roach and Foster, both of them to me just weren't that great. And then the last thing I have in the bad, Spencer Hubbard. Spencer was hunting for points. He took 2 3-pointers, and that is bad for the stats game.
You're trying to win the stats game in game 4, Jason.
Yeah, he's trying to knock me out very, very early on. So Spencer Hubbard I had in the bad, but I'm kind of kidding about that. In all seriousness, though, among the sort of deep bench guys, TJ Power missed all 4 of his shots. He missed 3 threes in the 11 minutes that he played. Look, I'm not sure. I think it's kind of doubtful that TJ Power plays a big role for Duke this season, but I really want that kid to have confidence. I want him, when he gets time, to feel good about that time, because these kind of things can spiral a bit on you. And TJ Power had some open threes that he took that didn't go down for him. I know that he's confident in that shot. I know he's seen it fall in practice. I know his teammates are confident and the coaches are confident in him taking it. I just wanted to go through in games so that he can feel better about himself, and doesn't get in a situation where, look, you've seen this with some deep bench guys who are good shooters in the past, where they miss a couple and suddenly you're like, oh, when are they going to hit one? And it gets in their head, I think. So that's one of the last thing really I had in the bad, was that I was hoping that TJ he'll get more chances the next couple games, I think. And seeing the ball go through the hoop can do wonders for a shooter.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the one thing when you take all the freshmen have had good games. for the most part. All the freshmen have had bad games at some point so far in this early part of the season. It's about consistency. That's something that's going to develop as the year goes along. TJ Power has an off night. That's fine, but he needs to be ready when his number is called next time. Because as we've seen, Jared McCain had a bad game against Michigan State, had a great game last night. Caleb Foster did the opposite, right? Bad game against Arizona, comes back against Michigan State, doesn't have quite the game he had against Michigan State last night. So
although that's going to happen. He had a lot of assists.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So there again, it's about factoring ways to help the team, even if it's not going to appear in the stat sheet, whether it's good defense, whether it's again passing the ball around. You get that hockey assist, so to speak, that's not going to have a one next to your name.
Exactly.
But it led to the pass that led to the shot that went in. So those sort of things are all things that are going to come as the season moves along. And the great thing is these freshmen are not in a position where we are relying on them super heavily like we have done freshmen in previous years, right? Like most recently, all the freshmen that come in have to have the ball, like the Paulo Bancheros, Zion Williamsons. Those guys were called on to do everything every game. These guys are not. We have a deep enough team that should not be the case, even though, as we've mentioned, some of these freshmen have stepped up at key moments throughout the season so far. So that's going to come with time. I'm really looking forward to that, but I'm glad that we got a lot of guys off the bench and got them some playing time against Bucknell, because we're going to need that as we transition to the next game that comes on Tuesday night against the LaSalle Explorers. Much better team.
Wait. We can't get to LaSalle yet. Play of the game time. I got to do the
Oh, that's right. That's right. Player of the game or play of the game. Tell me what's cracking. You said it was a Ryan Young play. Yeah.
There are two potential plays of the game, and both of them involve Ryan Young. We got an email from James Allen, who wrote to us at halftime. At halftime, he said it's halftime, and we already know the play of the game. Donald, at one point in this game, late in the first half, Ryan Young got a steal in the open floor, like anticipated a pass coming to the big man, and just sort of stepped in, knocked it away, picked it up, and went the length of the floor for a dunk. And James Allen was like, "That's the play of the game. Done." He's like, "I don't need to see anything else. I already know." He'd be right, except there was a play in the second half. Tyrese Proctor drives the lane, dishes to Ryan Young. The entire defense, turns their bodies, their heads. They're like, "Oh, Ryan Young." And Ryan Young then gives it back to Foster. It was like a touch pass. It happened so fast. For some reason, these idiots on ESPN did not show us a replay. This happened so quickly. It was unbelievable. Proctor to Young, back to Proctor, and then Proctor laid it in uncontested. Ryan Young, that pass was so sweet. It's one. I can't believe a center made that pass. It just shows you Ryan Young's skill. To me, that we got about 7 emails suggesting plays of the game. Some people were talking about Ryan Young's steal and breakaway dunk. I think, and the majority of the people who wrote to us think, that the Proctor assist was the play of the game, and they are right.
Look, if he's taking some of his game from Nikola Jokic, who likes to do those touch passes all the time, I'm with it. I think the rest of Duke fans would be okay with that too. And that leads me, Jason, as we wrap this up. Again, thank you to everybody who sent in headlines. Thank you to everybody who continues to send in their analysis of the game. Continue to do that. DBR Podcast at gmail.com. As games happen, send us your headlines. We will read our favorite ones on the show. But now we got to go to the next game, which is the LaSalle Explorers. That is on Tuesday night. They are ranked 193rd in KenPom, so much better than Bucknell. But to be frank, most teams in college basketball are better than Bucknell, so we have to look out for the LaSalle Explorers. Jason, real quickly before I give it to you for analytics, LaSalle 3-0 in the season so far. They play Southern Indiana tonight, so we cannot talk about that game yet, but they have beaten Drexel, they've beaten Northeastern, and of course they've beaten Bucknell in this Blue Devil Challenge thing. So
by the way, that Drexel win's a pretty nice win. Drexel's a pretty decent club.
Yes. And Drexel's, always one of those, again, when we talk about some of these non-conference opponents, it's about, have they beaten teams that you've heard of? And yeah, most people, when they hear Drexel, they go, "Oh, okay, that's a decent team." And again, Big Five in Philadelphia, one of the premier rivalries.
Actually, Drexel's not in the Big Five. We're going to get to that.
They're not the Big Five? Oh, okay. Yeah, never mind.
I'll tell you who the Big Five is, because there's a. Actually, let me go. Can I go ahead and do this?
Go ahead.
So LaSalle is coached by Fran Dunphy.
Yes.
You're like Fran. I know that
Fran
name.
Dunphy, Temple. Yeah.
Yeah, and Penn. He started at Penn. was then at Temple. Now he's at LaSalle. By the way, he graduated from LaSalle. Like this is his alma mater. He is the only coach to coach 3 of the 5 Big 5 schools. Literally, the dude's been a head coach for it's like 30 years, close to 30 years. And it's all been at schools in Philadelphia. He's never had to move.
Yeah.
But the other Big 5 schools are Villanova and St. Joe's.
St. Joe's, yes.
Yeah. So the Big 5 is Penn, Temple, LaSalle, Villanova, and St. Joe's. But Fran Dunphy is the only guy to coach at 3 of the 5 Big 5 schools. He's a hell of a coach. He won 4.
Has been to Cameron several times when he was with Temple, and I believe also with Penn. People will have to check me on that, but I'm pretty sure Penn visited Cameron once when Fran Dunphy was coach there.
Yeah, when he was at Penn, they had a couple years where they were like 11 seeds in the NCAA tournament. That's a big deal for an Ivy. Like, they were really, really good. And then he had some Temple teams that were outstanding. He had some Temple teams that were like, 4 seed, 5 seeds. He had a run of like 4 or 5 teams in a row that won 25 plus games. Really, really good coach. And it's going to be fun. He's 75, he's late in his career. It's going to be fun sort of to watch him and John Scheyer interact a little bit. I'm sure that John Scheyer, he knew Fran Dunphy's name from a very, very early age. I guarantee you. And it's just kind of, we can talk more, but we'll talk about LaSalle as a team, but I wanted to get a moment to mention Fran Dunphy, one of the special coaches in college basketball history.
Well, I'm actually glad you mentioned that, because in my lead up to your analytics, I was going to ask if if the analytics kind of show this, but Fran Dunphy basketball teams are normally very disciplined teams. They don't, they're very physical, but they're not going to foul a lot. That's a lot of what made Temple great, is that they were able to be physical without fouling. And, at the same time, they're just hard nosed. They're going to go right at you. They're going to, try and get to the lane. They're going to try and draw fouls against you and wear you down. But they just have a team that's just like tenacious every single time. In this LaSalle team, again, I know we're very early on into the season. What have you seen from the Explorers that lead you to believe that, hey, Fran Dunphy has his nose on this team?
Yeah, so the big thing about LaSalle is that they're going to really try and grind you out on defense. They have one of the slowest defensive possession lengths in all of college basketball, 340 if there are 360 or so teams in college basketball. LaSalle on defensive possessions, in terms of how long it takes the opposition to get a shot off, is 340th. So they are definitely a team that's going to grind you, make you work hard on the offensive end of the floor. And you mentioned that's a staple of Fran Dunphy kind of teams. They're good at forcing turnovers. They're not a great defensive rebounding team. Among the bottom 50 or so teams in the country at defensive rebounding rate, almost 37% of opposing shots end up as offensive rebounds. That's going to be a place that I think Duke is going to need to try and take advantage of LaSalle in a pretty big way. On offense, their analytics say they do a good job of holding onto the ball. They do not commit turnovers at a high rate. They're a decent, not great, but a decent 3-point shooting team at about 35%, and have a really high assist rate, 61%. This is a great passing team. They share the ball really well, and they typically take good shots once they've shared it with each other. They're not a deep team at all. This could be a factor in this game. They are 341st in the nation at bench minutes. Like, they basically are not playing their bench minutes at all. They have 15 guys on the roster, but only 8 of them have played in any games. Like, literally, they haven't had guys 9 through 15 haven't played a single second on the season thus far, which is just kind of a really interesting sort of thing. Should we, by the way, they're one of the smallest teams in all of Division One. Like, that's another analytics kind of thing in terms of, if you look at minutes played and the height of everybody and how they're playing those minutes, they will have a really tough time with Duke's size. One of the first things you look at when we're playing one of these, smaller conference teams is, do they have the size to match Duke? LaSalle really, really doesn't. And I think one of the biggest problems they're going to have is a guy like Mark Mitchell, who has shown, you're going to put a smaller guy on me? I'm just going to take him in the lane and shoot over him. And you're not going to this, crazy as it sounds, this could be another big game for Mark Mitchell, I think, because they just don't have the size to guard him.
Also, the guards. I mean, the guards that they start are 6'1" and 5'11". And the guards that we're starting are 6'3" at Jeremy Roach and then the rest are like 6'5" or 6'4". Like
Yeah.
we're going to have some trees. And the thing about that, usually when you have smaller guards, that means they're going to try and swipe at the ball, right? So you got to take care of the basketball. That's the first step for our guards. But also, as you mentioned, down low, they have a guy that's 6'10", and I think a guy that's maybe 6'8". And after that, it's 6'5", 6'1", 5'11". Like not a lot of size on this team.
Yeah, the 6'10" guy is Rokas Josius, I think is how you pronounce his name. He's from Lithuania. They really don't use him on offense at all. I mean, his job is largely to rebound. He's not a great rebounder, but you know,
when you're the tallest guy, that's your job. Yeah.
Yeah. His job is to rebound, you know, try and put a body on the opposing team's big man. I think he's going to have real trouble if Flip, you know, takes him outside and really puts some moves on him and stuff like that. He's going to have real trouble matching up with Flip, I think. And he's really the only guy they have who can match up with Flip. Donald, have you seen their guard? Their guards are small, but they've got a trio of really experienced guards, all juniors and seniors. It's led by Jameer Brickus, who's a great shooter. Dude's hitting better than 50% from three this year. He hit like almost 40% last year. Hits a high percentage of his two-point shots, averages 17 plus points per game. They also got a guy in the wing, Anwar Gill. Doesn't take a lot of outside shots. Not a good outside three-point shooter, but really good at taking the ball in the bucket, taking it in the lane. Scores about 12 points per game. The guy to watch out for, who I think this is the really interesting thing, is Khalil Brantley. And Brickus, Brantley, and Gill are the three guys who have the ball in their hands the most. So Khalil Brantley averages right around 12 points per game. He's a terrible shooter. If this guy was on my team, I would have no hair. I would look like you. You're bald. I have hair. I would have no hair because I would have pulled it all out. Khalil Brantley is not a good three-point shooter. Doesn't take a ton of threes. He takes a ton of mid-range to long-range shots that are not three-pointers. Super inefficient. Like he's hitting less than 40% of his 2-point attempts this in his career, and he's a high usage player. Like I don't understand. You know, like this year he's averaging 13 points per game, hitting just 36% of his shots. If you can only hit 36% of your shots, why are you shooting so much that you're getting like 13 plus points per game? He's just. I'm going to be real interested in seeing what Duke does with him. There's a piece of me that's like, let Khalil Brantley take as many bad shots as he wants. It is worth noting. I mentioned Brickus, Brantley, and Gill. All three of those guys average better than 4 assists per game. We talked about the fact that this is a team that moves the ball around really well. And those three guys are the guys with the ball in their hands. And they're the guys who are passing it all over the place.
You know, there's another guy that I want to highlight that you didn't mention is Andres Marrero from 3-point land. He's also as good. You know, he's shooting 58% from three so far. So him and Brickus are going to be the guys. Marrero's not a guy that's going to be involved in the offense that much, but when he is in the game, that is what he's looking to do is fire from deep. So it's, again, the perimeter defense is going to step up in a big way. I also think when it comes to our big men, again, we may see a lot of Sean Stewart in this game. We may see a lot of TJ Power in this game. Like those guys, again, gaining confidence against a team like this is only going to help. It'll be interesting once again to see how John Scheyer utilizes his rotations when it comes to this game. I think we'll have the same starters, but at the end of the day, who's going to come off the bench and who's going to really perform? I think this might be another great game for Ryan Young, because I think Ryan Young off the bench is going to be really, really key, especially again if it's him and Flip in the game. Then they only got one guy that's 6'10". The other guys are going to be looking up and saying, which one do you want me to check? You take big man, I'll take little man, that sort of thing. So we'll see a lot of that in this game. Last thing, word on LaSalle, Jason.
Yeah. So first of all, just super quickly, it is worth noting LaSalle is the best of the other teams in this multi-team event that the Duke has put together here. That's not to say they're, you know, a team that really should be able to compete with Duke. I mean, this is a game that Ken Pomeroy thinks that the Duke wins by about 20 points, but still LaSalle is, I guess you'd say, the most dangerous team in this multi-team event. But the thing I wanted to mention about them, they've got one of the most interesting, weird rosters that you've ever seen. So on the one hand, it's a super regional roster. They have 5 guys from Pennsylvania, 1 from DC, 1 from New Jersey, 1 from the Bronx. So 8 of the guys in the team basically are within like a 2 or 3 hour driving distance of LaSalle. The rest of the team, every other guy on the team is like international, like super international. Lithuania, Serbia, Venezuela, Argentina, Spain, Turkey, and Sweden. They even got a guy whose last name is Ireland. He's not from Ireland, but his last name is Ireland. But
where's he from? Where's he from, Jason?
He's from Pennsylvania. He's from, I think he's the guy from Pennsylvania.
Just like you drew it up.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm just like, you either live within like 3 hours driving distance, or you live like 5 or 6 time zones away from LaSalle. It's sort of it's a crazy roster. I wonder what the locker room's like, with all these. You got 7 guys from other continents, and then 8 guys basically, live driving distance from the school. It's just an interesting roster construction.
Yeah. I mean, the game is international now, Jason, and this Lithuanian pipeline that some of our opponents seem to have, like, Marty Pocious, where you at, baby? I need you back, back at Durham. Send those guys this way.
Marty's scouting in the NBA. Marty's a big time NBA scout these days. Yeah,
he can scout. He can still. He's part of the brotherhood. He can still, put in a word or two. Like that's wait.
We do have Tyrese Proctor on this team. No one comes from a further distance than Tyrese Proctor. He's like the other side of the world, exactly.
Right. Yeah. I've made that trip. It's not close. By plane, by car, or even by ferry. But we'll leave it at that. LaSalle, that game is on Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern time on ACC Network. Jason, we're going to get out of here. This has been episode 559 of the Duke Basketball Roundup. Thank you all for listening. Again, thank you for your headlines. Continue to send them in. DBR Podcast at gmail.com. Check out Home Field Apparel. Check out Fanatics. They are going to be having a ton of Black Friday sales over the next week, and Home Field Apparel I know has started already. If you use the code DBR Podcast, you'll get 15% off your purchases. And again, it helps us, save some money on the show with hosting fees and all of that stuff. So until then, for Jason Evans, I am Donald Wine. This is the DBR Podcast, and now it is time for the Duke Band to play us out and take us home.
Hey, just super fast. What's it like down there? Have you been to Trinidad before?
Yeah. So this is my 3rd time here. And Jason, the last time I was here was the game that we don't talk about.
Like with the World Cup qualifying, right?
Yes. 2017. I was at that game. So it's been, all that aside, this island is beautiful. Really, really enjoyed down here. So I got in yesterday. We didn't do much yesterday except kind of hang out at the hotel. We might get out, kind of walk around today, but it's not like a beach area, right? Like we're kind of like, it's an industrial city. There is a beach on the other side of the island called Maracas Bay. It's one of the more beautiful beaches in the entire Caribbean. We may do that on Sunday. We've done it each time we've been here, so we may do that tomorrow. But the game's on Monday, and then I'm on the red eye on Monday night heading back to the States. So
you say we, like there's a crew of like how many folks like are like you and come to like every U.S. national team game?
We have probably 20 here so far. There's more coming. So we usually have a nice, decent group. Going on away trips is so much fun because it's like, hey, do you like travel? Do you like soccer? You could do both on this trip. And people like, it sounds great. I'm in. So it's been pretty cool. A bunch of us were on the same flight down with we were on the flight down with the Trinidad and Tobago team, going from Austin to here. Because they don't fly charter. Yeah. So, but they had to fly through Miami. And which is this thing is that flight was at 5:17. And we were like, man, I know I'm tired. And I can't imagine how they feel. They played a game last night. And now they're on this 5 a.m. flight stuck with us going to Trinidad and Tobago over the course of like 10 hours. So, but yeah, so we're going to it's about the time for me to hit the pool right now.